Americans believe UFOs are vehicles from other worlds, and 3% of Americans believe they have been abducted by aliens. That's over 8 million people. They're out there, aren't they?
Welcome to the UFO Files Show with your host, Jerry Pippin.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Title of our episode today is Remembering Art Bell, the master of UFOs, and he branched out to conspiracy theories and other matters of the current time. He was no doubt the premier promoter, born at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, in 1945. Traveled around the world. He was at 30 different destinations. I believe he said 30 different high schools. And he ended up being a disc jockey. He had flirted with engineering at Maryland, so he was a man of the highways, byways, shipping lanes, etc. We start off our broadcast here with our late broadcast partner, Jerry Pippin, who explains why he got into UFOs. He, like Art Bell, worked out of the deserts of Nevada. Jerry worked out of Las Vegas, had an all-night show there. Art Bell also had a show in Las Vegas, and he then moved to a home studio, like Jerry Pippin, out in a remote town in Arizona, about 65 miles from Las Vegas, out in the desert, quite literally. And he died evidently out in the desert on Friday the 13th. How ironic that would be. But we noticed that today, and we said, well, here is an opportunity to do a UFO presentation. We had planned one based on the Washington Post, and a Washington Post article in 2017. And we've flirted with UFOs in the latter days of Jerry's broadcasting career. We worked as his engineer along with his longtime producer, and we thank her for this. Also, Jane Swartley. But nonetheless, this is an interesting episode in that we feature Jerry Pippin, we feature Art Bell. He's being interviewed by none other than Larry King, a veteran interviewer par excellence. So we bring those to you and appreciate the copyright holders there. And then we have actually Art Bell talking about his work and some more current day stuff. We had a current broadcast, I believe, about 4 months ago. It was one of his last broadcasts, and how he utilized a social media. He had a Facebook page, said he'd been taken off Facebook 2 or 3 times, literally, and had to send in his driver's license and various other things to return to Facebook. But he was also on YouTube. So in other words, he was one of these broadcasters out there that was utilizing internet radio. A big dispute we have with some of the people that use the term podcasters. We don't. Although you'll find on iHeart us listed under a podcast. But podcast is a very generic term, and it is getting lost. Because if you look back on what radio was audio. And that's what we're doing right now. But it appeared on its platform at the time. Of course, at the time, it was the broadcast waves. It was relayed by wires at the time. And then, of course, got to a satellite production. And that was where Art Bell was. He was on Sirius FM and various other channels. On the YouTube channel is in audio broadcast. The same as Jerry was. Jerry Pippin pioneered that, because at the time Jerry Pippin, was when we encountered Jerry Pippin back in the 90s, 20 years ago. He was broadcasting out of a small station down in Oklahoma, and he was simulcast on real networks. And later on, I believe what they call themselves the good guys, but nonetheless, and he was also on, that turned into, prior to that, it was owned by Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban sold out his internet radio platform to real networks. And then, of course, they took it over, and the scenario was, or the MO, people would use broadcast stations like KBIX, where Jerry was located. So he was broadcasting there, and at the same time he was live on the internet. Thus you had internet radio. And of course there are hundreds of stations on the internet now, where we are on the platform there. Over at iHeart Media, they have 800 plus radio stations. You can use their app. You can find their apps now at or coming to bostonred.org. And for our technical broadcast, which is the open source report, you can find that at crescent.com. And also a numbers man will be there using the iHeart app and apps from various others. So in other words, what you're doing, you're getting in the streaming business, the same business Art Bell was in. He used TuneIn. We will be going on a TuneIn. So in other words, he used all the vehicles out there that were open to him to do his show from his home studio. So we can quibble with semantics all we want, but what we are seeing here, back to the radio situation, the difference now is that we come to you digitally. But you will see the various radio stations that make up the iHeart family. Many of those have went to high def, but to being digitally broadcast. So it doesn't matter if you digitally broadcast from a tower or from a satellite or from the cloud, and most of them are operating out of the cloud as we are. A little editorial thing here to understand precisely what is being done. So you had pioneers like, of course, Art Bell, and Jerry pioneered the internet radio situation. And Art Bell broadcast actually on a clear channel, which did, I believe, about 13 different states. And then he got what was called syndicated. Jerry was also syndicated. Unfortunately for Jerry, the right-wingers pushed his show off as the same thing they did with the liberal broadcast. What was it called? Anyway, America. Maybe it's still going, but the problem has been when you start dealing with the talk show people, they have been dominated by the right wing. And if you go to places like, say, Blog Talk Radio, which is internet radio, and it is called radio, which is good, but unfortunately some of their formats have not been up to time. But now they are saying with Spreaker, which we are indebted to Spreaker because Spreaker has acted as an intermediary or let's see, what's the term we use? Aggravator. Aggravator? Anyway, effectively that is the term. It has some of these other platforms that host people on them. Anyway, enough about that particular item. But nonetheless, Art Bell died. He was 72 years old. And the reason we are doing this show. So what we're doing is blending Jerry Pippin's, one of his last broadcasts, I believe, from his home studio. Oh, it was about 14 minutes, and you hear it in its entirety. Then we'll go to the Art Bell package on Incipient radio. So again, you hear the term radio here, just as we have our station, WBRN, radio. And Art Bell, even at one time, had a short-range radio platform that he experimented. We did the same thing. We actually had a platform that came out of an open-source project by, at the time, Real Networks. And about the time we were opening up our platform, came a blog talk. I found them at the BBC, and we were to go on there in January, 10 years ago, or December, anyway, of 2008. So we've been around there now 10 years, but instead of that, I believe our first broadcast was the Pennsylvania primary that we actually broadcast there. We did broadcast on Jerry Pippin's network much prior to that, and that was, anyway, that set up. So thus, with our program here, we'll go to the Washington Post. That's the latest update we'd been planning to do for a very, very long time. And this is by Joby Warwick on the 16th of December 2017. We've had it around that long. Anyway, the head of the Pentagon's secret UFO office sought to make evidence a public UFO office before leaving his Department of Defense job 2 months ago. The intelligence officer there, Luis Elzuno, quietly arranged to secure the release of 3 of the most unusual videos in the Pentagon's secret vault. Raw footage from encounters between jet planes and aerial anomalous aerial vehicles, military jargon for UFOs. Okay, well, all right. The videos all taken from the cockpit cameras show pilots struggling to lock their radars on oval-shaped vehicles that on screen lacked the vaguely like giants flying tic-tacs. These strange aircrafts, no claims were made about their possible origin or makeups, appeared to hover briefly before spinning away at speeds that elected gaps and shouts from the pilots. Zuno and internal Pentagon menu requesting that the videos be cleared for public viewing, argued that the images could help educate pilots and improve aviation safety. Very good way to go. But in the interview, he said his ultimate intention was to shed light on a little-known program Elzuno ran himself for 7 years, a low-key Defense Department operation to collect and analyze reported UFO sightings. We will append this article, incidentally. The existence of the program known as the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program was confirmed officially for the first time on a Saturday by the Pentagon spokesman. The acknowledgement came in response to media inquiries, which were generated in part by a startup company. And we reported this, but Zuno has joined since retirement. The private country specializes in promoting UFO research for scientific entertainment purposes. So the current and former Pentagon officials confirmed that the Pentagon program had been in existence since 2007 and was formed for the purpose of collecting and analyzing a wide range of anomalous aerospace threats, ranging from advanced aircraft fielded by traditional U.S. adversaries to commercial drones to possible alien encounters. The total for the program was $22 million, quite modest there, but the funding officially ended in 2012. It was determined there were other higher priorities, as according to Tom Crossan explained in a statement, but officials for me with the initiative said the collection efforts continued as recently as last month. So in other words, it continued on. Bigelow Aerospace, a defense contractor that builds modules for space stations, it generated at least one report, a 490-page volume that describes alleged UFO sightings in the U.S. and numerous foreign countries over multiple decades. Now, this is managed, the program jointly out of the Pentagon, at least for a time, an underground complex in Las Vegas. All these things are in Las Vegas. Neither the Pentagon nor the program's managers have claimed conclusive proof of extraterrestrial visitors, but Elzuno, citing accounts and data collected by his office over a decade, argues that the videos and other evidence failed to generate the kind of high-level attention he believes is warranted. So, as part of his decision to leave the Pentagon, he no longer seeks release, but also penned a letter to the Defense Secretary, Mad Dog Mathis. Despite overwhelming evidence at both the classified and unclassified levels, certain individuals in the Department of Defense remain strongly opposed to further research on what could be a tactical threat to our pilots, sailors, and soldiers. He provided a copy of his letter to the Post, and his first public revelation of the program came in a video conference aired in October by the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. The film Elzuno joined the firm, as a consultant after retiring from the Pentagon. And Harry Reid was in this, and we had reported this before, but in other words, contacted by the Post, retired naval pilot who was involved in a 2004 encounter, depicting one of the videos confirmed the images actually reflect his collection of the events. Elzuno, a 22-year veteran of the department who held top secret clearances and worked on secret counterintelligence missions, says he chose to join a private venture because he believes that it's the best way to continue the work. And we reported on that private venture, and I was thinking this was a different article here, but we were looking for another UFO article, and we'll do some more searching for it in a minute here when we pause for a non-commercial commercial, as they say. But nonetheless, just sort of wondering about, I thought we had a more recent article from the Post as they continued their coverage. Let me just check one thing here. This is Bigelow Aerospace. We had their site on before, and hopefully, it is Bigelow Aerospace is in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Bigelow Space Operations is, I guess, what it is. It's called now. Bigelow Aerospace, visitors information, so forth and so on. We'll put a link up to their there at 1899 West Brooks Avenue, North Las Vegas, Nevada. And as to who we are, we'll founded by Robert Bigelow, founder, president, manager of it. A picture of him up here is the founder and president of Bigelow Aerospace, headquartered in Vegas, and we talked a little about it. We won't go much beyond that, but Mr. Bigelow successfully launched two subscription two subscaled spacecrafts, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, into orbit. So he's had some things going on here. Let's see, his experienced general contractor. Well, this is more about what the program is doing. The Genesis. Oh, we're doing the news very, very quickly here. They have a space hotel is coming probably in 2021. Probably a Bigelow Space Operation announces partnership with Cassis to fly a payload to the International Space Station. So they're involved in a lot of different things here. with the exception of their terrestrials and the more, I suppose, they are more now into it than just into aliens and various things of that nature. So we'll ink something to this, and this is from Forbes on March the 9th, 2018. And this is one of the ideas of what we think about when we deal with extraterrestrials, UFOs, etc., is to look into more current things, that they all involve space travel, phenomena or non-phenomena to that before. And this is not in an Art Bell format. Art Bell, the difference in he and Jerry was that Art Bell sold everything on his site. Literally, you name it, Art Bell had it. And he was very, very successful at doing it, the most successful of the UFO paranormal types. He had people come in and they would do these sightings. Just about everything you could ever think of, he was in it. In other words, the mankind's first space hotel is coming in 2020, next vacation there. Rather above a 72-year-old billionaire hotel magnate. This is Mr. Bigelow, has unveiled his plan for the hotel. And this is something that I think, while all this sounds sci-fi, Bigelow's credentials are actually sound. And with a commercial private sector, Bigelow Aerospace was founded in 1999. So, creating a line of B330 fully automated standalone space station. The answer to the question about the aggressive timeline, Bigelow has confirmed 2 stations, the B331 and the B332, are almost very far along in the fabrication. So he's actually made these stations. Plans show 2 50-foot, and that'd be 17 meter long and 22 foot 7 meters wide independent modules that will link together to create a space hotel, which offer cube capacity of current International Space Station. The B-33s can operate in a low Earth orbit around 250 miles up. Bigelow's primary plan is to sell stays to the government, who would use the time and space in space to for experiments in orbital laboratories here for a stay of one of 6 available beds. So this is basically what he has. And the B-33s are being built by Bigelow Aerospace. The space hotel will fall under the remittance of his new company, Bigelow Space Operations. An estimated cost of $2.3 billion. So we're not really talking about small money here. In a slightly longer worded station, these singular structures that house humans on a permanent basis will be the largest, most complex structures ever known as stations for humans usage there. This is what Mr. Bigelow has to say, and this is the story. So this idea is to try to update things a bit, and this is an extension of the Washington Post story about the UFOs, and we'll follow this up and see exactly where we end up. Nonetheless, we'll go now to Jerry Pippin, explaining why he got into the UFO / phenomena business, and then the interviews of Art Bell and his life as a U.S. Let me just finish this up. This is the information. The military keeps encountering UFOs. Why does the Pentagon care? We have no idea what's behind these weird incidents because we're not investigating. This is from Chris Mellon. He was writing in the Washington Post in March. In December, the Department of Defense declassified 2 videos documenting encounters between Navy F-18 jets and unidentified aircraft. The first video captures multiple pilots observing and discussing a strange hovering egg-shaped craft, apparently a fleet of such objects, according to cockpit audio. Now, the second shows a similar incident involving F-18s attached to USS Mipps aircraft battle group in 2004. So, in other words, these have been around for a very, very long time. Department of Defense, who analyzes these relevant intelligent confirmed more than a dozen incidents on the East Coast since 2015. Another recent case, the Air Force launched F-15 fighters last October in a failed attempt to identify an unidentified high-speed aircraft looping over the Pacific Northwest. Now, the Stars Academy, this is related to Bigelow in his operation out in Nevada. We covered him in a different report, but nonetheless, this fellow Mellon has served as Assistant Secretary for Intelligence for Clinton and G.W. Bush administration. So he's been around a long time, and reports from different services agents remain largely ignored. It's also remnants of the counterintelligence efforts of the CIA and FBI before 9/11. So he's relating this story. The reason we put it here was to do some updating from my work to the Stars Academy, which seeks to raise public funds to investigate incidents like the 2004 Admiral Mipps encounter. And this is part of what Bigelow and company are doing. Unidentified aerial vehicles have focused on an expired, largely media coverage of $22 million earmarked for Bigelow Aerospace, a contractor tied to former Democratic leader Harry Reid. That contracted without participation from the Air Force, NORAD, or other key military organizations. The real issue, though, is not the long gone earmarks there, but the numerous recent incidents involving the military and violations of U.S. airspace. With roughly $50 billion annual intelligence budget, money is not the issue. Existing funds, as they are a truly serious effort, would involve, among other things, analysts able to review infrared satellite data, NORAD radar databases, etc. So this is what he was writing here, and if we go to the Naval Times, and we'll put this photo up. A video released on Friday by the Stars Academy of science appears to show naval pilot encountering unidentified flying object. This is in 2015. Go Fast is an authentic DoD video that captures the high-speed flight of an unidentified aircraft at low altitude. This is according which was co-founded by Tom DeLange, former guitarist. Yeah, this is a part of the Bigelow operation. Go Fast comes after months after the Times, and we covered in a former program about the Times. The Department of Defense declined to comment on the latest video, but last December confirmed that the U.S. government ran a program for investigating UFOs, and we just talked about that. So this is kind of an addendum to it. and we thought it would be very timely to add this to the program here, Remembering Art Bell. Third DOD UFO video posted with the post, and this was on March the 24th of 2016. This is from the Roswell Daily Record. I assume this is in Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of this happened in 2018. That's what I thought. Why did I say 16? So this is pretty up to date. The Roswell Record there. So we have information that's just last month, actually. So we brought you up to date. This will end our program, and as Paul Harvey would say, good day.
Americans believe UFOs are vehicles from other worlds, and 3% of Americans believe they have been abducted by aliens. That's over 8 million people. They're out there, aren't they?
Welcome to the UFO Files Show with your host, Jerry Pippin.
Hello, everyone. This is Jerry Pippin, and here it is November 4th at 7 o'clock Eastern, and I'm live by the phone. We're going to try to do some updates every Monday on our UFO show. I'd like to thank Inception Radio, by the way, for continuing to give us a time slot and the programs by rerunning them. Over the past year, as you know, I've been suffering from several illnesses, and including colon cancer, and I had a little problem with my bladder. And the good news is that that's cancer-free, and I have had a treatment on the prostate, and basically, I think in another week and a half, I'll be back to normal on that. I am walking around, and I am at my home studio, and I'd like to thank everyone that's been loyal to us and checking us out at Inception Radio, and especially I'd like to thank everybody at Inception Radio for all of their support and the good wishes. And I thought I'd spend a little time tonight talking about why I do UFO shows. A lot of people have asked me that over the years. As you know, I started doing syndication shows from Las Vegas and doing basically celebrity interviews and entertainment shows. And from that, I kind of got interested in Area 51, and since it's right there. And we did a few UFO shows, got good reception, good ratings, and so we've been doing them ever since. And actually, I'd done UFO shows off and on with my talk shows all the way back to the 1960s. And a lot of people in the present day that weren't around in the late 50s and 60s don't realize how active UFO reports were back in those days and how interested the American public was. The campaign to discredit everybody in the UFO business really didn't start till a little later and reached its apex, I think, about the 1990s. And they're still going strong, trying to get us to, be discounted completely. And so I wanted to spend a little time talking to you why I do UFO shows. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like you to stop and think for a minute. Think about a clear November night, crisp, clear skies, and look up at the stars. Now, the next thing I want you to do is visualize that you're on a beach. Any beach, I don't care whether it's the Mediterranean or the Pacific, the Atlantic, in the South Pacific, wherever. Now, you're laying on that beach, and you reach in with your hand and you grab some sand. and the grains of sand trickle through your hand. Now, scientists have come up with a hypothesis, something they can't prove completely, but they have pretty close evidence that it's true. And that is, as many grains of sand on all the beaches on Earth, that's how many stars there are out there. Now, I submit to you that we now have found planets circling the stars. So you look back at those stars and you see that they're all suns just like ours, and many of them have planets rotating around them. Now think about this for a moment. Do you really think we're alone? I think the odds are pretty steep that we may not be alone at all. And next thing I want to talk about is the fact of the UFO reports. This is not just one report. Now, we're going to talk about Roswell, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the whole thing about it, and I want you to think about this, is that, there have been reports of flying saucers, lights in the sky, pilots in the military, in commercial aviation. They've seen them come up close and personal. Remember back there when the Iranians had an encounter with some UFOs. Actually, there were 4 Iranian fighter jets. This happened in the 1970s. And what they did is they tried to go up and intercept some UFOs over the capital of Iran. And one of the pilots thought that the UFO had shown some inclination maybe to try to shoot him down or whatever, so he armed his missiles and pushed the fire button, but guess what happened? Nothing. That's right, they have been disarmed completely. And it's a pretty famous story. It has a lot of credibility to it. And here in the United States, we have all kinds of stories about things, close encounters, people saying they were actually picked up by UFOs, talked to extraterrestrials. Now, I submit to you that many of them might make it up, but I doubt that they're all that creative. I doubt that everyone that comes on our show, and we've had hundreds of people, are making it up. Now, the planets, they all won't be like Earth, and so life itself won't be like Earth, if you stop and think about it. Even the Vatican admits that, it may not be carbon-based life at all. In fact, the Vatican is one of the places that is very open to the fact that there's life in other places. And so I just wanted to get into that for a little bit and talk to you about the fact that, UFOs, there's hundreds, thousands of sightings by now. It's been going on for a long time. We're talking about colonels in the Air Force and on down, major officers that have seen many things in combat, and they can come back and tell you about their UFO experiences. Now, they're discouraged by the FAA, and that's one of the strange things. Why does the FAA not even want to hear about a UFO report? They forward them on to several different UFO sighting places, as you well know, and we've done many shows with many of the people that operate those, and we plan to do more. Speaking of future shows, we expect to be live in our studio, sounding 100% again in December. Probably, I'm shooting for December 9th, and I know it's a long ways away yet, but we plan to do some more updates in November at the top of the show. And I'm shooting for December 9th when Larry Dickin, who started doing the UFO shows with me on this website, will join me. We haven't worked together in 5 or 6 years. But we're going to take a look at all of the information that happened in 2013, including some interesting sightings. A couple of things I want to mention. I got a UPI dispatch here that was filed 4 hours ago. And it's talking about a comet, Comet Isom. Comet Isom has come from the Oort belt all the way to the sun once, and will do it again. If you stop and think about that, it's the coldest place they can find in the solar system, and then the hottest place when it gets very close to the sun. This time around, in late November, I believe the 28th is Thanksgiving, on Thanksgiving Day, it will be the closest that it ever has come to Earth. It passed by here last year, and everybody, including even the Mars rovers, are taking pictures of this comet as it comes through. The question is, will it be disruptive, like perhaps affecting our electrical grid? I mean, they are testing it 2 weeks before the comet comes. Is it a coincidence? Who knows? But the fact is that we have a comet, Comet Isom, that'll be visiting us on Thanksgiving Day. It'll be there the whole week. If you want to see a comet, people expect you to see this one pretty well with your naked eyes. And if you have binoculars or a telescope, it'll be even more of a great show. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is Roswell. And we're all familiar with all the shows I've done from Roswell over the years. And Donald R. Schmidt and Thomas J. Carey, I call them Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, as I've been fortunate enough to meet them and know them well. And I've talked with Don Schmidt, by the way, as yesterday by email. And Don Schmidt passes his blessings to me about that he hopes I'll be able to come back. And Don, had a very strong, dangerous medical thing happen to him several years ago. He had brain surgery, as a matter of fact, but he recovered. And I think I'm going to recover. Knock on wood. Let me knock on the desk. Everything looks pretty good. It's been a long, slow healing process. I'm still in a medical facility, and we expect to get out of here by Christmas, if not before. Schmidt and Carey have a new book out, and they're going to be on my show here in December as well. I'm not sure of the date yet. We have to make sure I'm up and ready and strong as I think I will be. But the new book is inside Real Area 51, The Secret History of Wright-Patterson. Now, the title pretty much gives away the title of the information in the book, but it's well worth reading, and it's really probably one of the best jobs of reporting I've seen that lays out the information that the revelations of the Roswell crash fragments and perhaps even the alien bodies are still around. And guess where they are? No, not in Area 51, no, not someplace in New Mexico, but at the number one place, the one where they flew the bodies and the wreckage to begin with, according to Roswell legend and Roswell information. I think you can take Roswell and all of the evidence we've uncovered. I mean, Schmidt and Carey alone had 600 witnesses. I mean, come on. How can they deny this? And we keep coming out with strange stories from the establishment about what really happened in Roswell. Well, I submit to you what really happened in Roswell was an alien craft crashed, and maybe more than one. So anyway, Don Schmidt and Tom Carey have done a great investigative job, and they come up with startling evidence in this new book, and I suggest you read it. It's out now, Inside the Real Area 51, The Secret History of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, they have the revelations in that book of where the fragments are and the bodies, and they're down deep in the tunnels, in the guts, in the belly, underneath Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We'll have Don Schmidt and Tom Carey on, and we'll find out more information about that. And I think you'll find that a very interesting show. Tune in again next week. I'll try to be here live.
Heard on 437 stations in the United States and Canada. He's on the internet worldwide. He has approximately 12 million listeners. He's on all night long. 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. are his broadcast hours. Many times you hear him late at night, in the early hours of the morning, late evening. He's on. Where did all this start? Where did you come from suddenly?
I came from the world of rock and roll. I was in radio for, Larry, about 20 years.
A jock.
A jock, that's right. And then I finally got out, up and down the dial. You know, I got fed up with the whole gypsy existence, and I left radio. And I went and I worked in microwave for about 6 years, and I built a cable company. And then I got bored. Have you ever tried to stay away from this?
Yeah, well, it's impossible, isn't it?
It's impossible.
So why come back in as an all-night host? Or is that the way you came back in?
There was a radio station, a 50,000-watt station in Las Vegas. And one day they came to me as I worked in cable, and they said, gee, wouldn't you like to do a little talk radio again? How about doing, a little weekend work? And that was the beginning of the end. I was sucked back in. Pretty soon, there I am doing a daytime show, asking, this 50,000-watt station covers about 13 states at night. I'd love to have a shot at that. And they gave me a shot. And I did that for 10 years. And then we began syndication. And here I am today. So I was sucked back into radio.
Why all night?
You did an all-night show, too.
I started this.
You began that way, right?
Yeah.
I love all night. And I would never leave it. And I think there's something special about the nighttime and nighttime people.
How did you get into, for want of a better term, the bag you got into of things occultish?
Evolution.
Things different.
Evolution. A slow evolution. I didn't do it quickly. These are things that fascinate me. Absolutely fascinate me. So I would slowly inject them as I was doing radio programs. And I found the audience reacted well. I enjoyed doing it. The ratings reflected the fact that it was working. And so it was a slow evolution.
Do you think it works more at night than, say, if you were doing the same thing?
I don't think it would work at all during the day.
Because?
Not a chance. Because nighttime people are different. When nighttime comes, the buzz of the day slows down, the phones aren't ringing, you're not going crazy in the office. You have time to sit down and think about esoteric things.
And the attention span's greater.
Much greater.
Let's run down some things. You believe aliens have abducted some people on this planet?
I believe it's possible.
You believe Whitley Strieber?
I do. Whitley's a good friend.
Crop circles?
Undeniable. Doug and Dave with a chain and board? Well, yes, that accounts for some of them. Not 10-acre crop circles with 192 rings.
Ghosts?
Absolutely.
People call about ghosts?
All the time.
They hear them? See them?
Yes. Here it is. This is, my audience will understand what this is. What you have in your hand is bismuth and magnesium. And it is from Roswell. This is ostensibly from the crash at Roswell, New Mexico. This has been examined by just about every rare metals, exotic metals manufacturer in the country. It's been to Sandia. It's been to all the great labs of the country. Nobody knows how it's made. Nobody knows how it's kept together. It should be pure dust. Nobody knows where it came from. Most likely explanation, it was put together in space. Now, what you're holding in your hand is impossible. That bismuth and magnesium could be put together is simply impossible. Now, by the way, we had it tested at Carnegie in Washington, and I forget the type of radiation, but it's 60 times normal, so you might want to put it back.
I think that's a good idea. And what do I do with this?
You take it home and you put it up in the closet somewhere.
And someday. Anyway,
and
let's go.
You are about to have your last child, right?
Las Vegas, Nevada. Hello.
Las Vegas.
Hi, Larry. Hi, Art.
Hi.
Mr. Bell, I would like to ask you if you feel the world, or the U.S. in particular, is responsible enough to handle the knowledge of extraterrestrials.
I think that a lot of people, probably like yourself, are responsible enough to handle the information. But I think that if 10 or 20% of the people are not responsible enough to handle it, then unfortunately you may recall that in our own revolution it takes a very small percentage of people to not be capable of handling the situation for it to get out of control.
And that is usually the reason given by the believers as to why the government doesn't want to tell you.
Well, there was something called the Brookings Report, Larry, which said essentially that religious institutions and all the other great institutional beliefs that we have would very likely crumble if we found out that we are not who we thought we were.
Wouldn't you guess most people would like to hear that? That there's something else out there? Wouldn't you guess that?
Most people believe there is something else out there, but I'm not sure that they want to hear that our ancestors were little gray guys.
I was listening to your show last night, Art, and you were talking to Whitley about the material that you showed Larry this evening.
That's right.
And I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, can you tell us where you obtained the material?
Yes, it was sent.
Leave it in the glass and put it back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was sent to me. This was sent to me by a source in South Carolina, a military source, who claimed that his grandfather retrieved it from Roswell. And I've got all that paperwork.
For the benefit, that's an unidentified flying object supposed to have landed with bodies, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, second question, ma'am?
And the second question is, why is the government covering up so much about Roswell?
Well, the answer to that might be why they're covering up so much about a lot of things, and that is that the answers to things like this may lead to explanations that the government is not ready for us to have, and that we may not, in all honesty, be ready ourselves.
This is a material not on this Earth.
All indications are that this was not made on Earth, could not have been made on Earth. The best exotic labs in this country have tried to reproduce it, and they have not done so.
What happened in Paris?
I talked to a lot of people about out-of-body experiences. They're called OBEs. And I've been to the edge of an OBE before, Larry. Have you ever been in bed, sort of lying there, and you feel a kind of a vibration and a buzzing begin? Sometimes you snap out of it, and you feel like you're falling. Almost everybody's had that experience.
Or you can't get up.
Or you can't get up. Or you're paralyzed. Well, that's the beginning of an OBE, Larry. And I've been there several times, and I'm a control freak. You know, I do a radio show, and I do my own board, and I control everything. I control the phones. And I'm a control freak, so I would never let it go. But I went to Paris with my wife, and all of a sudden, I wasn't doing a radio show every day. I didn't have a deadline. I relaxed. I let my guard down. And I was lying in bed, awake, and instantly, with acceleration that I can only describe as incredible, but you didn't feel it as though the lips pressing back, you know, going up in the shuttle, I was above Paris, in what I can only describe as total ecstasy. There are really not words to describe what I felt. And it surprised me.
You weren't in the body.
No, absolutely not. It shocked me so much that I snapped right back into my body. Right back into my body. And here's something you don't do. I was so excited. I was so shocked that I woke my wife up. And I said, guess what happened to me? I said, and then I told her the whole story. Don't do that. Don't wake up your wife to tell her that kind of
wagons, right? Well, couldn't it have been, though, you flew over Paris, you having a dream sequence? Because in dreams, you fly into anything.
I have dreams every other day, every week. I know what dreams are. This was no dream. I was out of my body.
Do you remember going back into it?
It was instantaneous. And the reason I went back so quickly, I believe, there was no warning that it was coming. It was utterly spontaneous because I had my guard down. And I snapped back into my body because I was so shocked at what had occurred.
Which leads you to think what? All right, that plus this equals means.
Well, it may not mean anything. It may be that our brains, in other words, it's a function of a living human brain. Does it mean, somebody told me that's as close as you're ever going to be to death. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know that that means there's life after death. So you see, I really am a skeptic. But it may mean that it's a function of my living human brain.
Some people near death report things like that, right?
Absolutely.
That when they don't die and they come back.
Absolutely. But short of one a couple thousand years ago, nobody's come back after 3 or 4 days to tell us, you know.
I've never. You know, you got a new book out, right, called The Source.
The Source.
A Journey Through the Unexplained. In fact, there we see its cover. When you got into this, did you become a believer or a reporter?
I'm still a reporter. I don't think you could call me a believer. And everybody's always asking for proof. Do you believe in aliens? Well, I believe they could be here. Are they here? No, I can't say that.
But a lot of your callers describe it, right?
Of course. Of course. I've interviewed abductees. I've interviewed doctors who have taken implants out of people's hands and other parts of their body. So sure.
Now, if you question it, do you believe that they believe it? How do you separate that from
believe
the charlatan?
That some of them believe it. How do I separate it? I don't. In other words, I assume that my audience is made up of adult people. And so I present them with hard science. I present them with soft stories. And I allow them to make the decision.
All of it, Art, then, from your standpoint, has been self-educated to you, right? In other words, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have said, I have this wild interest in UFOs.
Not a chance.
So the audience developed it for you? I mean, well, taking calls one night?
I'll tell you what developed it for me. I saw one. That's what really developed it for me.
What did you see?
Fortunately, I was not by myself. I was with my wife, and this was during the time when I was commuting from my home to Las Vegas, a 65-mile one-way drive, 120 miles every day.
You live remote?
I live well, as a matter of fact, do you remember when you did that show, sitting out, desk like this in the middle of the desert?
Never forget it.
Never forget it. At Area 51?
Special for 2 hours.
I live
Area
just over
51.
That's
you
right.
live near there?
I live just over the mountain from that area.
Nothing near there.
I've always wondered, when you were sitting there, was it getting colder and colder?
Whoa, colder.
I thought so.
We started in the afternoon. By the time it got to be night, I was freezing to death. And it was, but there's nothing there. I mean,
nothing there.
You wait for the lights of Vegas. Where could you possibly live there?
I can see the lights of Vegas just barely from where I live. They kind of light up one little segment of the sky. Otherwise, it's clear, beautiful. The stars are a million deep. Milky Way is from one side all the way to the other side.
You broadcast from there?
I do.
From your house?
From home.
All right. What do you see that night? What's happening?
All right. I'm on the way back from Las Vegas, and we're probably about a quarter mile from home. To give you the setting, it's almost a full moon. It's quiet. It's so quiet that you can hear crickets at a quarter mile. That quiet. We're on the last leg on the way home, and my wife said, "What the hell is that?" She was in the passenger seat, and she caught something coming up from behind. I said, "I don't know." And I pulled the car over to the side of the road. We both got out, and here coming up from behind us, at about, I would guess, 150 feet, is a triangular object with 3 lights on it, 3 solid lights on it. One, I believe, was strobing in the front. It had to be about 150 feet from one point of the triangle to the next. It was monstrous. And
how far off the ground?
About 150 feet. It looked so big and so close that I could have thrown a rock at it.
No kidding. You scared?
No, scared is not the right word. We watched it come up from behind us, Larry. And it came directly over our heads. Close Encounters of the Stars and the moon went away. And it made no sound. As it passed over our heads, you could hear the crickets at a quarter mile, Larry. Still, no propulsion, no noise, going, I guess, about 30 miles an hour. I was in the Air Force. I know what aerodynamic flight requires. And trust me, this thing was defying gravity.
Of course, the explanation would be that's an experimental Air Force base that's secret to everyone, and that probably is something they're working on.
Then, maybe so. But if we have anti-gravitic craft, that's almost as big a story as if they are here.
This defied the law of gravity.
Absolutely. 30 miles an hour, floating, not flying. And we watched it, we stood and we watched it go over the valley for about 5 minutes, kind of with our mouths on, open.
Why did that not make you a believer that there is something somewhere else?
It did make me a believer that there are things that we don't know about. Now, it could be ours, it could be theirs, but the way I figure it, either way, it's a big, big story.
Yeah, if it's ours, it's a big story. If it's theirs, it's
If it's ours and we have anti-gravity, it's a big story. Mm-hmm. And they're keeping a lot from us. They developed the F-117 Stealth up there. Well, what have they been doing since?
You're into things different, right? Would you say, is that the correct way?
No, I don't think so. I think that what I'm into is part of life. I think it's as much of it, the things that you can't touch, the things that you're not sure of, they're as much a part of our life as the air that we're breathing right now. It's just that a lot of people don't notice. They don't take the time.
You don't screen the calls, right?
I don't screen
I didn't either for all those. I've never screened a call till television.
Is that right?
Yeah, but it's fun, much more fun. Why
it
screen
is.
A call?
My view is that if the talk show host is talented enough, that you can take any call no matter how strange, how weird, and make it fun, entertaining, informational, something or another. It's just, I enjoy not, I don't want to know what's coming.
Certainly, neither do I. Much more spontaneous. Right?
Absolutely.
Well, the screen is screens, but I don't want to know what the subject is. All I want to know, all I ever want to know is the city. That's the only thing that mattered. But you, in other words, when I hear your show, it's a happening, right? It's happening then. Nobody has filtered anything.
That's right. A lot of times I will obviously prepare. I spend about as much time preparing and knowing the news that I end up not talking about, and whatever it is that I've got prepared to talk about half the time or better.
Do you set a subject, or can anybody call on anything?
Anybody can call in anything. And believe me, that's what I get. I get time travelers. I get people claiming to be immortal. I get some pretty strange people. But they're fun.
What's it like to broadcast out of your house?
You know, I used to commute taking about 2 hours of my time every single day.
To a Vegas station?
And I thought that when I came home, when they built the studio in my home, I said, hey guys, how about building a studio in my home? And they did. And I thought, great, I buy back 2 hours of my life. Wrong. Now everybody knows where to find me. And so it's work from the moment I get up until I actually go to bed. Because everybody knows where to find me. Before I had those 2 solitary hours to drive back and forth. That's right. That's right.
Also, isn't it kind of weird to be broadcasting? I'd feel weird broadcasting out of where I sleep.
Well, I don't sleep in there. I sleep on the other side of the house.
I mean, it's the same area, right?
It's a converted bedroom.
Well, sometimes weird things happen. Tell me about that astronomer calling, saying he saw something following the Hale-Bopp comet.
The Hale-Bopp.
That turned out to be a false, right?
Actually, what happened is Professor Courtney Brown at Emory University
in Atlanta,
and an associate of his in Atlanta, yes, that's right, came to me and said, guess what? We have photographs of an object following comet Hale-Bopp. It's from a top 10 university professor. I said, okay, fine. Good source. Send me the photographs. I want to see them. So they sent me the photographs. I had Whitley Strieber also sent the photographs, to be sure. I talked to the physicist student that was associated, Prudence Calabrese. I had a lot to go on, Larry. And so I broke the story. Yes, there's something that apparently seems to be following Hale-Bopp, and I put a photograph of that up.
How was it proven wrong?
It was proven wrong when, in January, now this is a couple of months later, mid-November to mid-January, I finally got fed up of this so-called university professor not coming forward with his story. And so I called Courtney. I said, Courtney, I'm going to take the photograph and I'm going to publish it on my website. And he said, oh, don't do that. He called me and begged me, please don't do that. He said, it'll hurt your credibility. And I said, no, if I do nothing, that's going to hurt my credibility. So I put it up on the website, and it wasn't 24 hours. I got a call from Dr. Oliver Heinot at the University of Hawaii, who said, guess what? That photograph had to have been taken from this telescope within a 10-minute period of time. We can prove it because here's our photograph with the stars in the exact same position relative to the comet. It was fraudulent. So I put the fraud up on the website right next to the real photograph, and it was obvious they were the same photograph, but something was drawn in behind.
Hello, Art Bell.
Hi there.
I'm an Art Bell addict. I wish you'd do a program on Art Bell addiction. But I also wondered, what do you think might be the connection between Stonehenge and the Miami Circle? Is it the same type of sighting, but just smaller stones?
All right. The lady refers to a circle. There's a developer named Bauman down in Miami. The poor fellow, I kind of feel sorry for him. He had a $100 million project. He began clearing the land in Miami for this $100 million project, and they found what appears to be a sacred circle. And they had the bold...
Just like a chalk or a circle of what?
A circle that resembles in some ways Stonehenge. And it was about to be plowed under. The big D9 cats were sitting there, and they were about to do it. And we began a campaign trying to save it. And they went to court with eminent domain, and I'll be damned if they haven't saved it. So we had kind of a phone thing going to try to save the Miami Circle. For what reason? Because we don't know what it is, Larry. And to plow this thing down, this thing that could be extremely old, very old, ancient, tell us a lot about who we are, our own beginnings. You just don't bring in a bulldozer.
But what did Bauman do?
Well, I don't think he's a real happy camper about all of that. But we need a little time. I want some time to study
these kind of things, so we know more about why we're here, who we are.
Who we are. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what all this is about.
It's what everything is about. By the way, there's one other elegant explanation for the possibility of God. I talked to you about the God part of the brain. That's one idea. Another idea is that there was, our nation's best theoretical physicists, like Dr. Kaku, who I frequently interview, believe in the Big Bang. In other words, there was something. There was something. Sure, you bet. Something smaller than a quark, which we can't even measure right now and find, suddenly became all that is. Well, that doesn't work for me. In my imagination, I can't imagine something that small becoming all that now is, and frankly, they can't explain it either. So, imagine, Larry, that there's an entity. Before there's anything, before there's time or space, there's an entity. This entity is alone. This entity, in effect, blows itself up, and now becomes all that is, including you. So God is within all of us. Elegant.
Who made the entity? We'll be back.
I have a simple question to ask you, okay?
All right.
Everybody's always saying, well, where's the proof? People that claim it's a fantastic story that they've been abducted and the implants put in them, okay? Now, when they've removed these implants and they've been identified as material that is not of this world, then doesn't that tell you simply right then and there it comes from out of this world?
Are there lots of things that like the thing you gave me, that are not of this world?
No, there are not a lot of those things. Those things
so
are
the
very...
caller's wrong when he says they find...
He talked about proof. Everybody's always demanding proof. Well, these are not necessarily things that we can easily prove. You're about to have a new baby, right?
You bet.
And,
maybe as we speak.
And I'm sure it's on your mind. The phone could ring. It could happen any time. And your wife, you love your wife.
Very much.
Prove it.
Prove I love her?
Yeah.
You don't know what I go through. She's the best.
That's a line from Contact.
And
but I mean,
it goes. It's no exception for me to love her, because anyone
there you
will
are.
love her.
But I mean, if I were to demand proof.
Oh, well, prove there's electricity. I don't see the waves going through.
There you are. You can't. These are things you can't prove. That doesn't mean they're not real. It means you can't prove them.
How come the UFOs, which obviously have intelligence, I mean, they could stop in midair, they travel against gravity, they only go to Caracoca, Wyoming? Why don't they come to Times Square, Washington, L.A.? Well, you come to Beverly Hills, we buy it.
Here you are. When you go outside, when you walk outside, you'll look at traffic so that you don't have an accident. You look at the people that are looking at you. You look at it. When I came into the studio tonight, a policeman was going down the street drinking a cup of coffee, and his car was on fire. His car was on fire. Smoke billowing everywhere. Fire engines finally, 10 minutes later, screaming down. Well, this guy was just merrily going down the street drinking a coffee.
Starbucks commercial.
In other words, Larry, we don't pay attention to what's above us. We don't look up a lot, do we?
And in Pacacula, Wyoming, they do.
Well, occasionally you can't help it. You know, it may be... the first alien contact that we think we had was in Roswell. And it was a crash. Now, where did that occur? That occurred near the 509th Bomb Group. And what did they do? They were the group that dropped what? The first atomic bomb. So if they are out there, when the mushroom clouds began forming, I think that would have... their attention. Don't you think?
I would say.
At that point, they would say, what are they doing down there?
When you do what you do and you talk to other people you always talk to, I know you said earlier you were a reporter, but do you also become...
I'm not a reporter. I'm a talk show host.
Do you become conspiratorially oriented? A lot of talk show hosts live off it. I think he killed him. You know, they think Vince...
The thing we quietly contemplate the most, of course, it's death. Because cosmically, we're here not that long.
What came before us? That's right. What came before us? I want to say hi to my two little roses over there at the house. Hi, Asia. Our little 6-year-old first grader is under the weather. She's got a temperature varying between 100 and 102. And so, as you listen on Sirius, and as you listen on the web, whether the audio sounds okay to you. I found it very, very disconcerting that some people were telling me that Skype sounded better than I did. Very disconcerting. I mean, Skype is good, but, you know, it's not supposed to be studio mic good. Anyway, lucky I'm here. We had forecasts originally for, get this, folks, 75-mile-an-hour winds. Then they cut it down to 70, down to 65, and then 55. And today we had 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was ripping out there. So I was thinking, well, will we have internet? Will we have power? Will I have a house? But it's turned out okay, so we're here. And the wind has indeed this evening let up, thank goodness. The desert can rage, believe me. I thought I was toast. And I did a little drama and staggered around the house for a while. I really actually did think I was toast. I thought, well, if it's poison, it's here in my neck, it's right next to the brain, and it's going to be fast. So I didn't go to the hospital. The hospital came to me. The fire department came with medics. They checked me out, wrote a long report, and they need all these numbers. You know, Social Security numbers and on and on and on. Anyway, bottom line is I'm okay. The spider, they had me save the spider in a little jar with some bread to keep it in good shape so that if I did suddenly, sorry, Matthew, God, by the grace of God. Now, our ghost picture contest. It's over, but it's not over judging-wise. I want you all to go to artbell.com, and we've got some tragically bad ghost pictures, and we've got some real winners. I mean, some really, really good ghost photos. Go up there and judge. You are the ones that are going to pick the winner. It's that simple, really. You're going to pick the winner, not me, not the ghost master. You. So you need to go up there and give kudos and points to the good ghost photographs. Okay? Kind of leaf through them. And ghost stories, by the way. And we'll announce the winner of the ghost photograph contest on Spooky Matter on Thursday. It's coming right up. If you have a ghost story, there is still time to get it in. Send me a simple summary of your ghost story and include a phone number at the bottom, and perhaps we will call you. That's right, we may call you. All right, things to see on the website tonight. Oh, heavens, I have a video for you that I'm telling you, it was covered by a local Pueblo, Colorado TV station. This, ladies and gentlemen, is I don't want to give it all away. Here's all I'll say. It's about a woman who got caught in a flood. You know, they had a lot of floods there. And she's in her car as it sinks. But there is an ending to this story that will blow you away. I'm serious. It's that good. So you need to go up to the website and then leaf through, you know, at the front there, you'll see the picture of the oil rig. And then you've got little arrows and you can sort of, or just wait and it'll click through. When you get to the one of Pueblo, Colorado, oh my. You need to see that and see it to the very end. All right? Don't stop halfway through or stop once you see her rescued, because the punchline, which will send chills down your spine. I mean, this probably gets near the level of a miracle. All right? It's all at artbell.com. Also, I sent Keith, though I don't know that he's put it up yet, the Dome of the Rock UFO. You remember that? Somebody sent 4 synced cameras in of that UFO. And, of course, as I mentioned, the oil platform. Other reasons to go to artbell.com? Well, the wormhole, for one, where you can send me a message. Just find the wormhole and send me a message. It will go in Arizona and back out again here in Nevada, right in front of me. An Oklahoma school teacher says she's seen heaven's pearly gates and lived to tell the tale. Crystal McVeigh's near-death experience brought her face to face with a God that she spent a lifetime doubting. And the Altus, Oklahoma woman says the only reason that she's even alive is so she can tell others now. About 10 to 20% of people who go into cardiac arrest or clinical death have lucid memories of their brush with death. She remembers. She claims she talked to God. But let me begin here because, of course, the Paris attacks. The CIA director says more attacks are likely in the pipeline. There were to be seen today lots of ISIS guys on CNN saying, Europe, we got you and we're going to get you again, and America, you're next. American blood, they say is the best. American blood. Our intelligence agencies are strained. And when they say that, they really mean it. If our intel agencies, if the NSA is strained to keep up with everybody who's here or might be here or has bad plans, then we're in big trouble. Lots of raids in France associated with, and Belgium, associated with a bunch of arrests. They arrested a whole group of even suspected people. So we know the Paris area was shocked by a major terrorist attack Friday night that's being claimed by the Neo-Caliphate, I like that phrase, terrorist group ISIS. But just hours before the attack was carried out, Facebook removed a key anonymous group responsible for identifying and reporting thousands of social media accounts used by ISIS recruiters. Now let's think about that. Anonymous on our side in the sense that they're exposing groups planning to attack us, right? Now, regardless of what you think about ISIS, their origins and who is pulling the strings and funding them, one thing is clear. They've been spreading their ideology and recruiting using Facebook and Twitter more than on-the-ground traditional methods. We talked about this last week. The anonymous group Red Cult initiated an operation to counter the ISIS social media presence called hashtag OpISIS, Operation ISIS, in other words. We at Counter Current News, that's where this story came from, have been the primary contact point for OpISIS from the start, and we continue to be today. That's why our source in the Red Cult told us today that a group calling itself Report ISIS Accounts run by Anonymous was removed by Facebook, and the administrators from the group all banned. The anonymous group Red Cult initiated an operation to counter the ISIS social media presence called, again, OpISIS, and, you've got to ask why. Why keep Anonymous from doing the job that American and European law enforcement either are unable to do or overstrained or unwilling to do? Exposing accounts used by ISIS to operate and recruit on social media. Facebook has refused to respond to inquiries from Red Cult or from Countercurrent News and several other alternative media outlets who have contacted them directly. Now, Facebook, as you know, has its own terms of service agreement. What I want you to hear is a message that I have on my Facebook. If you can take looking at this masked ISIS face, and I want to play this for you here on the air. The only thing you're missing is video. If you go to my website, you're not going to miss that. It's up there for you right now. But here's what they are saying. This is kind of a ISIS sort of introduction right now, which is worth watching, by the way. The video you're listening to, available on my website. This is, of course, from our friends at Anonymous.
Greetings, citizen of the world, and Facebook. We are Anonymous Red Cult, as most of you know. We're engaged in Operation ISIS from some time now, to fight ISIS online in different ways, like taking down ISIS sites, leaking information, exposing ISIS accounts on social media sites. One of our groups on Facebook called Report ISIS Accounts, with the URL www.facebook.com/groups/opisis, and it's dedicated to post and report ISIS accounts from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and other social media sites, where we reported and deactivated thousands of accounts they use to communicate, recruit, and spread ISIS propaganda. Few hours ago, Facebook decided to close this group and block the admins for 3 days, without giving any explanation for it, except, quote, "We removed the post below because it doesn't follow the Facebook community standards," end of quote. So we asked, is it because ISIS supporters reported us back? And if so, for what reason? Or Facebook is bothered from us reporting terrorists' accounts that violate Facebook community standards anyway, by using fake names and posting inappropriate and violent propaganda that only serve ISIS terrorism. We asked, is this one of the new Facebook policies, to protect terrorists' accounts, instead of fighting it? Or simply Facebook doesn't care? We leave this for the public opinion, to judge this action by Facebook, action that can only be interpreted that Facebook took a wrong decision. Anyway, we will continue our fight on ISIS. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
So, yeah, there's the audio, and that if that's not enough, trust me, you need to see the video. It's on my website, artbell.com now.
Is quite possibly the identities of ISIS operatives. There's evidence that hacktivists were involved in stopping an attack in Tunisia some months ago. There's evidence that hacktivists were involved in stopping a plot in New York some months ago.
Well, then, why in heaven's name doesn't our government, through some back door, allow information to be shared with them? Is there any of that going on, or can you not comment?
I have no idea. My thought is that is not the case, simply because governments tend to not like working with fifth columns, and Anonymous is sort of the ultimate fifth column.
So would you imagine that my Facebook account, which I do enjoy, is now in some jeopardy, or do you think it'll remain up there?
I don't think it's in any jeopardy, at least not immediately, unless someone decides that they're not an Art Bell fan and decides to hit that little report button.
Yeah.
Americans believe UFOs are vehicles from other worlds, and 3% of Americans believe they have been abducted by aliens. That's over 8 million people. They're out there, aren't they?
Welcome to the UFO Files Show with your host, Jerry Pippin.
Hello, everyone. This is Jerry Pippin, and here it is November 4th at 7 o'clock Eastern, and I'm live by the phone. We're going to try to do some updates every Monday on our UFO show. I'd like to thank Inception Radio, by the way, for continuing to give us the time slot and the programs by rerunning them over the past year. As you know, I've been suffering from several illnesses, and including colon cancer, and I had a little problem with my bladder. And the good news is that that's cancer-free. And I have had a treatment on the prostate, and basically I think in another week and a half I'll be back to normal on that. I am walking around, and I am at my home studio, and I'd like to thank everyone that's been loyal to us and checking us out at Inception Radio, and especially I'd like to thank everybody at Inception Radio for all their support and the good wishes. And I thought I'd spend a little time tonight talking about why I do UFO shows. A lot of people have asked me that over the years. As you know, I started doing syndication shows from Las Vegas and doing basically celebrity interviews and entertainment shows. And from that, I kind